Welcome to Parenthood Bytes, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to episode 2 of Parenthood Bytes. We're here today with Abdul, who is an IT manager at a big tech company. Abdul is currently located in Ireland, and we're so happy to have you here today. Welcome, Abdul.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for the invite. It's great to speak to you.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear your story. So I like to start with asking, what brought you to tech and how many years have you been in tech?
Yeah, it's a great question. I studied linguistics, Chow, at college, and I was really into languages and linguistics. My ethnicity. I'm originally from Oman in the Middle East, so um, I was always interested in languages. I spoke my mother tongue and I always found it interesting. So I got into linguistics and I graduated around the 2008 financial crisis time. And as you probably recall, it was a very tough time during then. And after I graduated and I did my research at college and all that, and I got reached out by Google they were doing their autocomplete project back then. You might recall the autocomplete back in 2010. So this is I've been in tech for around 12, 13 years. I came in originally from the linguistics side. Now I do a mixture of engineering and kind of like trust and safety legal work. So it's my 13th year coming up. I never thought I would be in tech, to be honest. I thought I would probably be doing something maybe closer to languages, but it's been a great time. The industry's changed a lot. I'm sure we can both agree on that. But yeah, it's been 13 years and it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, 13 years. That's quite a while. And it's interesting to hear how your role has kind of evolved. It sounds like kind of from what you first imagined it to be from college to now, right?
Yeah.
So how many years have you been working in tech when you first became a parent?
Yeah, I was at Twitter. It was an interesting time back then. I was at Twitter between 2016 and 2019. I had my son, who's now just about turning 5 next month, which is how time flies as parents. I remember holding them as a child. So I was in tech for around 6 years. It was a great period. I got married a couple of years beforehand. Such a blessing to have my son. And at that time, Twitter was fully in the office. This is Jack Dorsey times back 2017, 2018. And I was lucky in the sense that both my managers were parents. And I was actually, they offered 20 weeks. And as a parent, as a father, I was in a quite high demand job. I'm sure, yourself at Twitter back then, even then, it was quite a busy period. I was the only member in Ireland at the time on my team. And my wife very openly said, I know you love your work, but this is our child. And I'm so glad, child, that I took 20 weeks off. It was a bit tough. My managers kind of said, well, would you like to take 8 weeks and this? And I said, well, I would like to take the full time. And it was the best decision I ever made. I got to see my son growing up. I got to help my wife. So that was back in 2018. And my son, it was quite a difficult birth. My wife gave a cesarean section because it came a week early. And for many, many weeks, she was in quite a lot of physical pain. She couldn't move around. So that time was great. I got to spend time with my son. It was quite interesting. So my son's now 5. I have a daughter too. So I have 2 children. I have my son who's 4, who's going to turn 5, and my daughter who's 2, who's going to turn 3. And she was born during the pandemic, Chow, and it was completely different. I wasn't allowed in the hospital. I didn't get to see my daughter being born. I was working at a company then. It was eBay. They only gave 2 weeks parental leave. I was working from home then, but it was very different. But I was very lucky to spend some time with my children. And I think for a dad, I was really worried, would I be what's best for my family? what's best for my wife, and I'm really glad I got to take that time off. So yeah, I'm really glad to share that with you, and I would love to talk to you more about how it, the two kids are so different, etc. But yeah, that's a little bit of background for you.
Yeah, wow. I mean, 20 weeks versus 2 weeks, that's a huge difference. And I think
Yeah.
like being able to work from home is great, but at the same time, you're not fully 100% able to take care of your baby, spend time with your baby. So it's a very different dynamic, right?
Mm.
And I think we overlapped a little at Twitter because I joined in 2018.
Oh wow, you used to work at Twitter too.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember when I joined, they were like, oh, this is our parental leave policy. And I was like, I'm done having kids, but that's great. A part of me was like, man, if I had one more kid, that would be
Yeah.
great to have that. But yeah, tell me a little bit, let's dig into it a little bit deeper in terms of like the difference of the parental leave and like how did you adapt with your family to kind of
Mm.
the differences? And also pandemic, having a baby in the pandemic must
Yeah.
be very different because in the old days it was like, oh, something happened to my kid. Let me call the doctor. Let me go to a doctor. And you
Mm.
couldn't do that, right?
That's correct. And so with my first my son, I didn't know the policy, and thankfully, I had two managers at Twitter back then. Um, and I was in the Dublin office, and one of my managers was in SF, the big headquarters in Market Street, and the other was in Dublin, and they both had children, so they were very supportive, which I really appreciated. And I will be very transparent, Joe, that like there were some indications. Abdul, you're a very important member of the team. Would you like to take less time? And me personally, I was of the opinion before having children, I'll give me a couple of weeks, I'm fine. But my wife did say, look, it's our first child, and it was really good to spend that 20 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you, I got pangs of work. I felt a little bit out of place. My wife was with our child, I was helping, and I felt, well, am I doing the best? But I really got to spend a lot of time with my son. Really got to play with him, and help my wife and my family, which was great. And when I came back in to work afterwards, I do remember a lot of the colleagues saying how things different, etc. And after a year or two, we were very lucky to have our daughter, who's our second child. And I was at eBay then, quite a new starter at eBay. But the policy was 2 weeks, and I was like, even it was just during the pandemic, and I thought, well, 2 weeks is going to be really, really tough. I know, at least a month. And this was during the lockdowns. So my daughter was born. I'm staying at home. Thankfully, the birth went well. My wife and my daughter were well. But after the 2 weeks were over and I was working, I was in incident command. And, as in an Eng, incident command, I was like, you have to respond in 5 minutes. And my son is not two. My daughter was a couple of weeks old, and I'm on next to no sleep. And I'm sitting there, and it didn't go well, and I was able to work, but I remember very vividly, I'm sure you can say as a fellow parent, the really stupid arguments you get into with your wife about throwing the bins out or you made a mess, and that lack of sleep really hurt. And I remembered thinking, that's the difference. If you don't have that parental leave, you're not only leaving your wife behind mentally and physically, you're exhausted, you're going back to work, your mind's not there. And it's at a stage now whereby we got two children. Yeah, obviously we never say never, but I'm not sure that we would have any more. But say if we did, I never realized how important those first 4 to 6 weeks are, and the juxtaposition between my son and my daughter, and how it affected me and my wife in different ways was one. And also the lockdown as well, and I'm sure it was the same in the US as well as it is in Ireland. I just felt like I missed a big part of my daughter's, the birth that I wasn't there. And I'm glad that on the health side I wasn't there. I did my duty as a right citizen, making sure I'm not breaking rules. But my wife gave birth at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm not there to help her. But thankfully, it went well. And I'm a manager now at my company, and I'm really glad that, say, if I get any questions from any folks on that, I'm really able to advise. But I did find the difference quite big, to be honest. Not just for me, but also for my wife. I am glad I was working from home. I did get to see my child more. And just to add as well, when I was at Twitter, I used to see my son only for like an hour a day. I used to travel into work. Now I get to even spend 5 minutes to play blocks with him is such a blessing. So it's ups and downs. But I thought that juxtaposition would be something I would like to share with you, you know?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you took that full 20 weeks when you had your son because, like you said, a lot of times when we're getting ready to have a kid, we're just like, it's fine. Like, you feed them, put them to sleep, it'll be fine. But we don't think about all the nuances of it, all the things we need to do to take care of the baby, take care of ourselves, take care
Hmm.
of our relationships. And so it's so important. And it's interesting how you mentioned kind of the difference between that and your second child. I'm so glad the child came out healthy. Your wife is healthy.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. But I hear you where it's like you want to be there, and it's
Yeah.
hard to be there with all the restrictions and everything, and having to work while juggling a baby and wanting to be there for your wife. That must have been really hard for you because
Yeah.
you see it, you hear it, but you can't
Yeah.
physically, right, be there. I definitely hear you on that.
Mm.
And you mentioned your kids right now is 4 and 2. Is that
Yeah.
right?
They both were born in November. So next month, they'll be turning 5 and 3. And speaking to a fellow parent, where does the time go? I mean, like, I know days are a struggle, but like, it's just yesterday I was picking them up from the hospital, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're turning 5 and 3. They've started school. That has its ups and downs, as I'm sure you know yourself. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun and really blessed to have them in my life, me and my wife.
Yeah, and next month will be a really fun month, right? To have two birthdays. Do
Mm.
you celebrate their birthdays together or you have separate celebrations?
Yeah, I was talking to my wife about it, and my kids know their birthdays are coming and they want their own cakes, child. Like it's changed now. Like one wants a unicorn cake and the other one wants this and says, no, it's my day. So we'll probably do it separately. I remember during the lockdown, it was a really funny story. I think it was my son's second birthday. My daughter was only like a month or two old. And because all the shops were closed, we had nothing. There was nowhere to buy a cake. It was true. And the only cakes that were available, them Christmas cakes, them really simple Christmas cakes you get, like the ginger cakes. But my son is 2 years old and he's very happy with a very cheap cake. But now he wants a cake of, I don't know, I think it's Paw Patrol or one of the TV shows he watches. And my daughter really likes unicorns. So I think we'll be celebrating it separately. I think there's like a week and a half between the two kids. They really like their stuffed animals. So I think actually I can show you actually on the camera. I know we're talking on it. She really likes unicorns. So we've got her a unicorn, a
Oh,
really big unicorn. Just for your listeners, it's a big unicorn, and she's a big fan of it. And my son really likes tractors and farms, so we got him a big tractor, and it's quite easy to buy at that age. But I think they've already told me and my wife, no, we want our own day, so we'll do it.
yeah, I love that. I definitely hear that. Where for parents, we're like, well, you're just a week apart, right? Let's do a bigger celebration together. But no, they want their own. And I totally understand. They want their
Yeah,
special day, they want their theme. And I love that they each have like very specific, this is what I want. And,
yeah.
yeah, my youngest, we just had his eighth birthday, and he was very
Wow.
specific. I want to have a party, and he never had a party before because of the pandemic. So he's like, I want to have a big party. I want to have a Pokemon cake. And so, of course,
Wow.
we had to oblige because he never had,
Yeah.
those things. Like you said, the options were very limited the past few years. Um,
Mm. Well, I'm really happy for you. I'm really happy from happy birthday to him, and
yeah,
hope
thank
he has a
you.
good time. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, he loved it. It was great. He got to see all his friends, and
That's great.
they came to celebrate him, and he was just like, "Wow, I've never had this before." And it was just a whole different. It was sad because he never had that before, but I
Yeah.
was glad we were able to give it to him before he got too old where he doesn't want it anymore.
Indeed. Yeah. No, that's great that he was so excited for it. That's a great feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was curious, sort of on a daily basis, kind of what do you
Mm.
do for childcare?
It's a great question. So, my wife's an accountant. She used to work for the Big Four, like I think it was KPMG she was at. And I'm very lucky in tech that I earn a decent salary for my family. My wife said very openly that I would like to have children, and I would like to stay at home. And I said, fantastic, whatever works best for you. I'm very lucky because I work from home. I can take care of them at certain times, take breaks. I have a very understanding manager. So currently at childcare at the moment, we were looking into both of us working, but I'm sure it's the same in your area. The cost of childcare is really bad, and I think it's a deep injustice actually we have in our societies at the moment. How wealthy we are, we cannot provide assistance for that. So currently at the moment, my wife takes care of them full time. They're very boisterous, my children. I'm sure all of us have boisterous children, and I do jump in at times in the morning runs. So our school starts around 8 a.m., 8:30, so we're up at like 6, half 6. I'm not gonna lie, we're usually up a lot earlier and we're up during the night and all that. I'm sure it's the same for everyone. And we get them changed. They're currently both doing like 4 hours a day, so we pick them up at midday. I take an hour or two out of my day to read them books. We try to teach them different languages. We do ABC, 1, 2, 3. My son also really likes to draw, and he likes to steal my pencils from my room. So he goes into my room and my daughter, and they steal my pencils and my paper, and they draw nice pictures. So currently at the moment, I share it with my wife. My wife does a great job, and she takes care of them most of the time. She sometimes be very vulnerable and say, I can't take this anymore. Just take them. I'm trying to make food, or they're just driving me off the wall. So I'm kind of like the fun dad that takes them out to the park, or I take them around the corner and they can run and pick some leaves up. So that's the kind of childcare agreement at the moment. I currently work for a company which is fully remote from home, and that's a big, big part because I, to be honest, felt really guilty going and leaving my wife, going into work in an office, coming back at say 8, 9 p.m. She puts the kids to bed, and I'm like, I know I'm doing the right thing, but I feel guilty that I haven't done anything. And just those 20, 25 minutes after a couple of hours taking the kids, just seeing them, feed them their dinner, means I feel a little bit more part of their lives as well. And just the juxtaposition I had, I remember when I used to leave my son for most days and he would not even know who I was for 5 days because I used to travel so much. I made a conscious decision with my wife. I said, look, irrespective of career progression or whatever, spending that couple of extra hours with you, even when I'm working, is really a fantastic thing. So that's perhaps the major reason I'm working from home, is just to spend maybe those extra couple of hours and help out my wife in certain ways, you know?
Yeah, those times in the commute really do add
Yeah,
up. I mean,
yeah,
the headquarters were at San
yeah,
Francisco, so for me that's like an hour and a half commute there and then back. And exactly what you said, when you come home, there's either the kids are asleep or you're too tired. You want to
yeah.
play with them, but you're just so exhausted. And I
Hmm.
love that you have that balance with your wife where it's like, hey, if you're having to, if it's too much with the kids today, let me take them a little bit. And
Yeah,
that's really nice because taking care of kids all day can be, as you know, so exhausting because they have so much energy. And we
yeah.
try, we try to keep up, but sometimes it's a lot for one person. And so
Oh,
it's
definitely.
great. There's two parents, two kids, so you're not outnumbered and you can, you know, watch
Yeah.
them. We have three kids, and some days the little one just has so much energy. I'm like, it's a lot. Here, maybe
Mm,
watch a cartoon or
exactly.
something. And that's what works for us. So I think it's great you've figured out a routine that works for you where you can be with the kids, play with them, and that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And I plus one on your effort of when you have just one who's just completely, the energy is off. And the way we usually, it's either usually TV, or one thing that I'm trying to introduce, which is good, but like my walls are full of colors now, is we give them colored pencils. But I'm sure it's the same for yours. Like, books aren't enough. They want the walls, they want the ceiling, they want the TV. Sadly, my daughter, thinking that the TV was real, so she jumped on the TV, and unfortunately, we had to. Thankfully, she's okay. We had to take her to hospital. She had a small cut in her mouth, and you just can't stop that. My wife was saying sorry to me. I'm sorry. I went just to turn around, and she's trying to take the TV down. So, oh, it's the same boat here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one day you look at the walls and you're like, oh, I guess we're coloring on the walls today. I look
Yeah.
at my computer. One day I'm typing and my hands are gray. I said, why? He
Mm,
was drawing on the keyboards.
yeah.
I said, why are you drawing? Because that was when we had virtual school. So he was
Hmm.
bored in class, I guess. So he thought, hey, let me just draw on my computer. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that kind of So I was a little bit, you touched on this a little bit, but I was
Mm.
curious kind of how has your work life changed since you became a parent?
Oh, completely. When I was single, Joe, like I think it was my time at Twitter actually, I was a workaholic. I would put in 12, 13 hours a day. And it wasn't because they asked me to, it's just because I was in the, you'll know this well, the whole trust and safety, legal, cybersecurity side. So I was on my element at Twitter and I loved the work. And I would be there. And before I got married, I had my life outside, but I had no consideration for anyone else. I was very lucky I got married. And the one thing that I'll never forget when I had my son was just that life there that I had would never be the same. Caring for someone, loving someone, being there. It was the same for my wife as well. And now it's a lot more balanced, but it's a lot more hectic. Like in the next 10 seconds, my son could run in my room, or my wife could say we need something. So that's definitely changed. And you fit your schedule around them rather than yourself. What time they go to school, what time do they eat their breakfast, what time do they have a nap, etc. I think the one over one as well, which I'm sure I can share with you very openly, and also people who are listening to this, is the real lack of sleep that we parents get, and it really affects us. And like last night, my son thought that 3:30 was a good time to wake up, and I'm trying to say maybe a bit later, than 3:30. So you have to just accept the ups and downs a lot more. You'll just feel absolutely shattered. And I'm lucky. I work in a company. My manager has two children himself, quite similar to my kids. And he'll just look at me and he says, "It's been a tough night." And I went, "Yeah, they decided to do it." So that's one thing which I was worried about when I turned a parent. But it's really quite nice that you realize that things don't revolve around you. It doesn't matter how important it is, and it's really revolving around the kids, around my wife, etc. So that's great. Another element which is really important as well, and I think it touches on this point, but also maybe on others as well, is the importance of understanding you can't be on 24/7 for anything. And there used to be a point in my life where I used to be able to fully concentrate on work, on coding, for example. And then, next day you come in and you go into VS Code or your IDE and your son has decided to break all your code by just button mashing your keyboard. And you have to sit there and think, yeah, I didn't have this when I was single. You're writing I was writing some code. I think I was writing some code in Ruby and Rust. And I took, how Rust is, the program language is this nightmare. So I'm sitting there, I've got the definitions right, the curls right, and I'm sitting there for. My son walks in 10 seconds later, sees I've got a nice mechanical keyboard, bashes it, and I'm like, that 4 hours is gone. I don't know what's going on. So I'm sitting there and I'm going to my wife and says, I'm really upset. I can't say to him, don't ruin my code. So I'm like, son, please leave my keyboard. And he's like, no, Dad, I like the colors. So that's a challenge that we don't have, when we were single, kids going into our IDEs and button mashing when we have a nice command written and a nice, we have everything going. So that's good. And also as well, you have to, I think one thing I really like is the selflessness. You just accept things are broken. I have behind me multiple keyboards which are just bashed or broken, mouses that are broken. I have books which are written on. My laptop screen I'm talking to you right now has a big sticker on because my son thinks it's cute. And that taken away from yourself is a great thing. It just takes that first couple of weeks, just takes a bit of practice though. You just don't understand it. But I think that's how my life has changed. It's a lot less selfish. I think it's more, open. And I'm sure you can attest, broken keyboards, broken mice, just, I have notepads now which just have smiley paste pictures because my son thinks it looks nicer than my notes. And I'm like, yeah, son, nice. Good. So yeah, I think that's a struggle for all of us parents. So just to step back and say, no, your notes aren't as important as that child at the moment. Let him draw on your notes for a bit.
Yeah, and you don't realize how fast you can adjust and adapt to things, right? Until you
Yeah.
become a parent, you're like, okay, you're flipping through your notes for a meeting, and you're like, oh, there's a big picture on top of what I was going to talk about. I guess I will just make it up at the moment.
Yeah, my daughter also loves to come into the meetings as well, and most of my colleagues are parents, but some aren't, and they'll just see some random thing of a child holding up a pen saying, "Dad, I want a new pen," and they're all just sitting there. And you first start and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry, but then it comes an endearing part of your daily schedule. Your mind's like, oh, where's your daughter today? Is she coming in to say hello, or she's going to take the time off? But yeah. Also, my kids don't really understand what I do. They're like, oh, Dad, he's looking at a screen. He's not working, which is nice. I'm glad that they think I'm just in another room. But my daughter's like, Dad, stop looking at the TV. I want to talk to you. I'm like, it's not a TV, but I understand it. Okay, we'll go for a break. But yeah, I'm sure you can know yourself. It's those things you actually really cherish, later on going forward. You go for a notebook and see your daughter or your son just messing up your wonderful notes, and you think, you know what, that was a nice time.
Yeah, yeah. And especially, when you have a stressful day and it's hard,
Mm,
then you flip through and there's a nice little surprise in your
yeah.
notebook, or you see that sticker. And you're like, oh, yeah, I remember when he put that sticker on there. And those are
Mm,
the nice memories,
oh, for
right?
sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think about as they get older, they're not going to want to come in anymore. They're not going to want to, come in to draw with you and things. And I think my oldest is already in well, my older two are in middle
Mm,
school. My oldest is
mm,
13. And sometimes when I want him to come in, he's like, no, I'm busy. I'm doing my thing.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I go to my youngest and I say, okay, you come over. He's still the baby. So
Yeah. I have my brother-in-law who has teenage kids, and he's like, however bad it is now, I miss every day that kind of interaction. He sees my daughter and gives her the pencil, and she's like, and I'm speaking to my nephews, and they're grown up in their teens now, and so yeah, it's one thing me and my wife do try to remind ourselves when our children have completely trashed our room, and we're sitting there 11 at night, exhausted, and we're like rubbing the wooden floor, cleaning the TV, or fixing another broken thing that, it's quite nice to like, hopefully they'll still talk to you, but when they get a bit older, they won't be as available. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely. There's the positives, a little bit of the negative, the hard work, but it's
Yeah.
definitely all worth it. And
Oh yeah.
I think you kind of touched on this a little bit as well, but I was curious kind of what is your biggest struggle or challenge with being a working parent?
There's a couple. One is just the constant juggling of things, and it's really like, I know it's a lot tougher for working mothers, a lot more because I have friends and also obviously my wife. It's the constant juggling and the exhaustion. The exhaustion gets to you. There are certain days where you're just completely, you're just struggling, and that's really tough. And the randomness of all, well, but last week, thankfully, my daughter's fine now. She hurt herself quite badly. She had to go to the hospital for cut mouth, and my whole day's planning was just inside 10 seconds, just completely up in the wall. And I'm sure it's the same for all those parents, one small thing or something happens and that's it. That's your day. You're going to have to completely change. So that's quite a challenge at times. The second of all, and I think that the workplace in tech is definitely more accepting of this now, but we do still have folks who aren't as accommodating to parents. They'll just be like, well, we can't move this deadline or you have to make this meeting, and you do your best to explain it. And sometimes I have faced that at companies whereby it's not as accepting, so that's quite difficult. And I think also as well with my line of work, I'm a manager now at the tech company I work for. Sometimes I have to work late hours, and you face like the sadness, but also the anger of your partner saying your work doesn't matter more than our family. And then you might get into these, I'm sure, same, back and forth about, why are you spending so much time at work? So I think that's some parts of working parent I find quite tough. The exhaustion, juggling things. Sometimes it can not be accommodating. And also as well, the hours for tech, and I'm sure you can attest yourself, they can be very, very strenuous. On call, for example, an escalation on Saturday night, that's, I think, certain things that make it difficult. But I have to reiterate, like being a parent in tech now, I'm so lucky. Get to spend time with my family, get to spend time with my loved ones. And overall, it's been a great privilege, but it definitely comes with challenges I never fought before,
Definitely hear you. The exhaustion, especially. I mean,
Yeah.
some days, even when you turn off your computer, actually most days, you're not completely off, but you have to
Yeah.
try to be present for the family, and all of that I think is just a lot for us to adjust. And you adjust every day, right? Take
Hmm.
it day by day, try to adjust. And it's great when we have the such a supportive partner to help kind of take the kids when you need to be on that call or do those things, right? So it's really nice to have that shared responsibility and have someone to support you through that.
Yeah, it definitely is. And also as well for like parents as well, I'm sure that the exhaustion can lead to it can put a strain on your marriage as well. And, with arguments and with lack of sleep and all that aspect as well. I think the end aspect is a bit difficult. I think I can share this in transparency as well, which is, you've got this wonderful thing about your family, etc. And you're sitting there at an unsociable hour, it always usually is. And, your platform's down or you have a huge issue. And when you finish that call, and you go back in, your partner's like, I know you had to do that, but like you've left me in the lurch for a bit. And that's like, you have to have that trust with your partner as well. But that's one part of eng and tech, which is a challenge. It is tough. You know, it doesn't matter if you're working from home or you're working in an office. It's just the nature of the game. But I think that's one element that you do just have to try to be as transparent as you can. But I still find that a challenge at times, you know.
Absolutely. And also the strain on the relationship, like you said, but also on the relationship with kids too, because I noticed as my kids got older, they started to see when I would get frustrated from work. They started to notice those things. And there was a time when at the end of every day I would go to them and I would be like, was I happy mommy today or angry
Mm,
mommy? And I just
mm,
wanted to hear from them to know that I was on the right track, because I needed to be more intentional about how I showed up in front of them to not have that exhaustion, that frustration
mm-hmm.
carry on to them.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to grow up and be like, when we were little, our mom was just always angry at us, you know.
Oh, I know. And actually, I'm really glad you brought that up. My dad worked night shifts when I was a child. He's a truck driver. He drives trucks, forklift trucks for a bakery. And my wife's my father-in-law was the same. And this is a big aspect because we grew up and we were always scared of our parents waking them up. They were in a bad mood. And my wife goes, even if we have that much work, let's not have what we grew up with, you know, worry about worrying our dad to our children. And that's a big part as well of what we try to do. Even if I have a brutal day, my wife says, look, if you need 5 minutes to make a tea or a coffee or read a book or whatever, do it. But just come in and try to do it as well. I think the one element that I'm really trying to do as well, which I'm really proud of in working in tech, is to introduce my children if like I need to take them. So once I was in a meeting, I'm sure we've all been there, and my wife goes, I'm sorry, I have to do something. And I'm in a meeting with three very senior managers on my team, and my children are just sitting there making funny faces behind. And I'm thinking, this is my annual review, children. Like, you know, I love you, but can you at least, you know, not make a funny face? And the funny thing is like, I'm really glad how tech has evolved. It was just like, all managers were like, A, we've got children, but B, it's just really nice to see how you're able to interact with your children as well. So I think that's great. But I think the one element that I'm really proud of being a working parent is that beforehand you would work and you provide for yourself, which is great. But small things like buying a small gift for your child after the long day's work, or just a lollipop, or making some food to feed them, that brings you such happiness. And I know it's probably safe to say, you know, seeing your child's face light up when you give them a small gift, or when you finish your day and they come and give you a hug. That's one element that all the pain or all the anger and frustration just seeps away, and it's a great feeling, you know, as a parent.
And that makes it all worth it at that moment. And I love that you shared the strategy that you have of like, oh, when I have a really tough day, these are, you know, take a few minutes to do whatever I need to kind of release that so that I can be my best self for the kids. I think that's a really, really good tip for other folks going through something similar.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because it's tough, you know, the boundaries between work and home are so intertwined, even if you're in an office or outside. And sometimes I have to physically give my phone to my wife, even if I'm on call. And if I get a notification, you know, and she's like, look, it needs a break, even if you're on call. So, you know, take it. So being open and transparent about that is really important with your partner.
Yeah, that's huge. I know this is something we're all working on, and probably it changes day by day, but what is something that you do to achieve work-life balance, or something that's working for you right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, for work-life balance, I've always struggled with it previously. Before I had children, I would work too much. Thankfully, I've balanced it out a bit now. I think the good thing about having children is, and about the work-life balance, is sometimes you're forced into moving your schedule for them. And that's a great thing. I think the element that really helps me with the work-life balance as well is the small periods up to 20 minutes to the 30 minutes that you get outside of work during a work day. That means so much. And I think what we've done now is I've been very open with my wife about her trying to prod me to take more time away from my computer, involve the kids more. If I'm in a meeting where I can have my camera off, take care of the kids, have them watch the screen while you're on mute. Hopefully they don't press the button and shout, but you know, you get them more involved, which is good. And also as well, my room at the moment I'm in is a tip because my children have really gone about and they go in my room and they move things around, and being comfortable with them being in your work environment is one that I helps a lot. So that's another aspect. And the second of all is if you're having a tough week or a tough couple of days whereby your work-life balance is out of whack, I'm trying my best now to volunteer to do things to make it easy for my wife. So do the hoovering, take the kids to bed, throw the bins out, and try to help out on that stage. That's really well. Another element on the work-life balance, which is really important as well, is to just block out time as your calendar, just even like a half an hour, and just say, I'm going to read to my kids for half an hour. And even if you're having a really tough day where it's back-to-back meetings, or you're an instant command and you're having issues with the back end, just a half an hour can really just help to balance it out. So that's really good. And if some days, thankfully some days we're not on call, we just really do try to put the electronics away and spend time with the family. And that has its ups and downs. So yeah, also being very open and vulnerable to your manager or your team, saying, look, it's been a tough day all week, has been really helpful. But I'm really glad that my wife is very open and very transparent. She thinks, look, you're working too much, or I need more help. I think that's really, really important as well. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to just excuse it and say it is what it is. Just say, look, I'm sorry. What can I do better? And that's really helped as well. Also, because I work in the tech company, we're online so many times. Those small pockets that we get, make sure we spend as much as we can with our family. So that's really helped me a lot.
That's great. And I think, I keep hearing you reiterate, which is really important, that like communication with your partner is very, very important through these things. And I love what you said about blocking out blocks on your calendar, even if it's only 30 minutes, because those times are so great for your mental health, but also so great for your wife, your kids, for you to spend time with them and stuff. And being able to put away electronics, because even if my phone is right next to me, sometimes I don't even realize I'm picking it up.
Exactly.
You check your email, you check your Slack, you check, oh, what's going on in the world today? It's just, you don't even realize that. But intentionally putting that away must have made such a huge difference.
It did. Put it on charge, put it away. And you mentioned Slack, when you get that notification and then you're ultra vigilant and you're checking like channels you don't need to check, or etc.
Yes.
So that's really one that I struggle with a lot. And the second one was like, my wife is like, if you're checking the news, let's watch the news together on the TV. We don't need to look on the phone. So that's been a really good one. And what's really been nice is in Ireland, we have a couple of different languages. We have Irish language. And my wife's like, well, why don't you get the kids involved and they can learn a different language while you watch the news together? So we've been trying to think of ways in which to do that, which has been fantastic. I do reiterate the communication, because when I first started this, I was so bad at it. It led to huge arguments, as you can understand. Like I would say, no, it's fine. And I'm like hiding away for 20 minutes in a corner doing my status report for my eng manager. And my wife had a really frank conversation. She just goes, look, I don't mind it, but just be open with me. Don't hide it. I know it might lead to an argument, but it's better to be open. So that's one thing that I don't regret, but I do wish that I was just a bit more open and try not to make it a small issue when it was a bigger one, and just to be open. I think that's one advice I give to new parents if they are in tech, which is if you do have issues with that, I've always found it best just to be very open and say, look, I'm sorry. Don't try to brush it on the carpet. Don't say it's nothing. That's been one that I would give parents that would be really helpful, just to be very open about where you're struggling or where your time's going.
Yeah, whether it's big or small, right? Because if you aren't open, eventually it'll become something bigger.
Indeed. Yeah.
So what are some things that help you relax or unwind after a long day, long week?
Feeding the kids is great. They're still 5 and 3, well 4 and 2 at the moment. We're going to turn 5 and 3, so feeding them is great. They love colouring at the moment, so colouring with them is great. That really helps. We get them to bed, so I put both the kids to bed. At the moment, they sleep in the same room. They have their own beds, and I'm make sure they go to sleep. So that helps me a lot. And it was a lot tougher. My son, growing up, was really bad with his sleep. Thankfully now he's better. I do get to spend 2-3 hours after I put the kids to bed to be with my wife. When they were both younger, their sleeping patterns were so bad that me and my wife got to spend maybe half an hour together after our work, after the kids went to sleep. And it really affected our moods and also our behavior at times, because we just didn't have enough time together. And thankfully we were able to get them to a routine. But I think that's one of the harder aspects I found, which was the sleeping patterns. Thankfully it's better now. And on weekends as well, one thing that is really good, because our kids are so energetic, is taking them on walks. So we take them on like quite, not really far walks, but I live in the Irish countryside, and I'm sure it's the same across the world. Taking your children to like a very basic park, or just like a walk for 10-15 minutes, or even a longer walk. We took them last fortnight to a heritage house where they just walked around for half an hour and they had their wellies on and they were jumping in the mud, etc. It just, that weekend made them just so happy, a small kind of thing. And we didn't do that early enough, and I'm glad that we've been doing it for the past couple of years. But like taking time to ask your children where they want to go is such a winner for us now. Like, oh, Dad, I want to go to the park with the big slide, and that's the highlight of the weekend. So I think that's one element that really relaxes because it brings the kids a lot of happiness, which is great. And also as well, as new parents, when we go into restaurants, and we're always worried because we used to be saying, oh, I'm apologizing or looking at our kids. And all. You just embrace it and accept it and say, I'm sorry, look, my kid will probably go and make a bit of a noise. And we try to find restaurants now which offer kids activities to make it easier. But sometimes you just have to accept, I'm sorry, so it's good. So I think that's a couple of elements which really help with that. One thing that's been really great, and I'm really glad that we've done, is we kept a scrapbook of all our kids' memories, there's birth certificates, paintings, pictures. And we actually, I was giving some advice to a colleague of mine actually who's went on parental leave now, that even though we're in a digital world and we both work in tech, the most prized memories me and my wife have of the physical pictures of the children we have in our room, which like a fridge magnet or a small picture next to the coffee table. That physical image there, I mean, it's great to have it on your phone, but it's not the same as seeing it and, your child sees the picture. So that's a couple of things that really bring me a lot of happiness, playing with the kids, seeing their memories growing up. And also as well, try and do things which interact with us all.
Yeah, just spending more time with the kids, doing things they love and seeing their happiness. You love doing it too.
Yeah.
Right? And you're so right about having the pictures, because we have pictures all over the fridge and artwork. Nice. And every time I go to open that fridge door, I look at those and I'm like, oh, I remember those moments.
Yeah.
Having it on your phone is very different because you have to be intentional about scrolling it through your phone, looking at it, but having it there is definitely different. And also, I hear you about the restaurant. We try to go to restaurants to have the crayons, the placemat. And there was a time when I carried a bag of activities for them in case we went to a restaurant that didn't have it. I would collect a bunch of crayons and have like little whiteboard, little markers for them to play with, because you get self-conscious, as a parent, even though you're like, people should kind of expect young kids to not be the quietest, but you as a parent still get a little bit conscious about that.
Oh, for sure. And my wife still has it in the bag, and I still have it. And we try to pick it out. And sometimes when it doesn't, we have the crayons and we endless supplies of milk bottles. And they don't call it juice; they call it water juice. They want the water juice bottles, and you have so that's one element. But it's been a lot of happy memories. And you go back, and same for us on the fridge magnets. You just go, and then when your child sees themselves on the picture and they point and say, "That's me," that's a wonderful feeling,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they still look at that and go, "That was me? I was that young." I'm like, "Yep. Who else could it be? Is definitely you." And then they'll talk about like, "Oh, I remember when we went there," and then it's a nice memory to share. With your kids being 4 and 2 right now, what's something that you see a struggle with them at this age that maybe wasn't a struggle before?
It's a bit of a tough one because we both are in the tech sector, and I'm trying to, because we're seeing what tech can do, and I'm trying to reduce their usage of electronics, which is always a struggle at all times, etc. I think the one element you always do worry about is that they're at that age where they can hurt each other quite badly. And especially my son can be quite rambunctious, and my daughter as well. So that's one element. But overall, they go on really, really well. The element that I suppose I do worry a little bit about, obviously, them growing up now, it's just like physical safety, roads. We take them to schools, and the roads are quite busy. So we're still trying to teach them about road safety. So that's quite a big one. But overall, we're really lucky. They understand the rules of the road. They follow, make sure that they hold your parents' hand. But at this age of 42, they just, like, my son now is in his first year of kindergarten of the school. My daughter's in preschool. So they're a lot more relaxed. I'm not going to lie. In the summertime when we had no school, the house was just like, after the 4th time of hoovering, you just give up, There's one element that you just sit there. My wife was like, I can't wait for them to start school again, because it's just going absolutely off the walls. And my daughter then decided that it's really nice to try to jump out the window, and we got all the locks on, and she's trying to like break the locks, and you're like, you're 2. Why are you sitting? So I'm trying to explain, look, leave the window alone. It's a nice place, but And you always worry, and this is the one thing which gets a bit worrying when you get a bit older, because like you try to childproof your home, but then everything is dangerous. The side of a table or side of a corner, etc. So that's one aspect. And the second of all, I think one thing which is really difficult for too is just how quickly to get through things: clothing, books, paper, anything that they have. And it looks like we're just shopping every couple of weeks or months to replace something that's broken, but it's okay. And I think that's one element that I just have to remember. And also, kids are curious. I don't blame them. I suppose I would be the same as well if I saw a nice sunshine in the window and you want to touch the window. So yeah, as overprotective parents, we probably have 2 or 3 locks, and we're always watching them, etc. But yeah, that's one element that's always a struggle up and down, which is good. We're very lucky; we have really nice neighbours, and they're very happy, and most of them are of all the generations, so they get to play with them, which is fantastic. That's great. And one which is really nice as well, which I'm trying, is to try to feed the food that me and my wife eat to the kids. So give them like the rice and the noodles. And one element I wish I learned when I was younger was try to give them more food they can play with. They eat all the spaghetti because it's so fun to play with, and they're messing with the spaghetti, or they love the pasta with the different shapes on. So yeah, that's been a revelation for us. Try to make food which looks a little bit more interesting to them, and they'll eat it.
But it is nice that they can now eat solid foods that
Yeah,
you can share with them, right? There was
yeah,
a time when I was trying to, use the food processor, make them food, and then they just didn't want to eat it. I'm like,
yeah,
it doesn't look that bad, but you couldn't add that many flavors to it.
yeah,
And also, you mentioned about worrying about them getting hurt. I remember I was so amazed by ways they could get hurt. I'm
yeah,
like, everything is baby proof, but you're just walking and you still hurt yourself.
yeah.
you know, you you can only baby proof so much, and it's just fascinating. They figure out new ways to hurt themselves.
Yeah, I was. It was quite funny. I remember my son. He decided to take one of my scarves and decided to run headfirst into a wall for no apparent reason. But he decided to pick like the most like edge-filled wall, and I'm diving to save him, etc. But
Yeah.
children are wonderfully ingenious at finding ways to hurt themselves. It really is something. Our TV. I think I've gone through 4 TVs now. I think, child, they've found ways to. Oh, this has been a nightmare. We had the TV on the actual stand. They went behind it. They broke it. Then we put it on the top where you connect it. So yeah, warranties are a very important thing. Yeah, and then even then they don't sometimes agree with. No, I'm sorry, your child breaking your thing is not your warranty. So um, that's been good. And also the wonders of a child. We got a new Hoover a couple of weeks ago with like a faster speed, and they all get so happy. Oh, is the fast Hoover coming out? And they're all running around, and so that sense of wonderment is wonderful. But I'm very grateful for them having a routine with school. Without it, it's tough. It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there are so many hours in the day, right? You're
Yeah,
like, how do I help them burn that energy, keep them
yeah.
busy? And I'm so thankful for the teachers too, because
Hmm.
I'm like, wow, how is a teacher able to control them, handle them,
Wow, I
manage
know.
them throughout the day? They just are able to, and then they come home, they're not as
Yeah,
energetic, not bouncing off walls, like you said, and it's just so nice.
the skill set that they have for those teachers, I think the patience they must have, and the wherewithal is fantastic. And actually, I was commenting to my wife last week about how well mannered and how amazing my son's teacher must be, because I once saw them in the playground for 2 minutes and they were going at each other with such venom, and she just was able to calm the situation down. I'm like, oh, that's a phenomenal skill you just got there. It's something I still haven't got anywhere close to. So massive respect and kudos to the teachers, to the great jobs they do.
Absolutely. We're about close to the end, and I think you touched on this a little bit earlier too, but I'd love to know kind of what's something that you would tell someone who's in tech, about to start a family, or what's something you wish you knew before you started a family.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think number one is don't be afraid to ask. And before I had children, I was really concerned about the parental leave. And I know a lot of parents in tech are. And it was the best decision I ever made. And it's a unique one, it's a personal one. Every parent has different situations and needs, and they might need less time, they might need more time. But I think one is to obviously talk to your partner and see what works best for you. But be really open to your manager and say what you desire and require. And I think that's really important. So I think that's one. I think on the parental leave, which is extremely important. And I think the second of all, which is really I'm really glad that the tech sector's got a lot better at this than when I started, but it's definitely in a great spot now, which is A lot of the things that you worry about, don't worry too much about. People are very understanding, and the majority of them, 99% of the folks I work with are so understanding of things that we might fret about as a parent. Oh, I'm so sorry that, I've had to move this, I've had to move that, or I'm not available. The sector is good. And I think the third, and I think this is one of which, like, I'm still struggling with, Chow, so I think I'm one to share it, but I'm still working on it, is taking PTO, not just because of the school kids, but because of yourself. I've burned out mentally with this job because I'm balancing the things, and I'm just thinking about what works best for taking care of the children. But in the past 4 or 5 years, I've mentally burned out 2 or 3 times at work because I've forgotten about that. And that's one thing I would remember. I would maybe give a kind of reminder to parents in tech, which is obviously we give everything for our children, but don't forget you might need some time off and PTO for yourself as well, just for no apparent reason other than just to take it easy. And I think that's one of which I'm still battling with and I'm still struggling with. But remember to take time off, not just for your partner or your thing, but for yourself. If you're burnt out, if you're mentally exhausted, take some time for yourself. That's good. And it has its ups and downs, but overall it's a good sector to be a parent in. I think it's a great sector to do it. But yeah, those are a couple of things that come to mind. I think the first one that obviously is one that I'm really glad that I've learned, but it would be great for people to think about, which is your parental leave and talking about it openly. But the mental exhaustion is one I can't really stress enough. And think about what works best for not only your family and your children, but also for yourself. You've got to take care of yourself and working as well. So yeah.
I think that's a really, really great point. Like they say on the airplane, they say put the oxygen mask on yourself first,
Yeah.
then you can put it on your kids. Because if you're not in a good state, it's hard to take care of others and work and all of those things, right? And I remember a few times I would, take PTO because my kids were off, and then we would go on vacation, and then we come back, and I jump right to work, and I was exhausted. I was like, I need to take a PTO from my PTO.
Exactly.
And it's so important to take care of our own mental and physical health for sure.
Yeah, because it'll not only affect you, it'll affect your family as well. So that's one aspect which is really there. But yeah, the parental leave of the two children, I do recall it back, and I do see like how it really was quite, that those real times are extremely important. So I think that's one element that I'm really glad I was able to chat with you today about, and it's one with which like I do tell my colleagues and friends in the sector that definitely do what's best for you, and it's not a one size fits all, and do definitely speak to your family and your loved ones about what works.
Everyone's situation is different, and we do what's best for us right now, and it may change in a week, in a month, but we do what's best for us right now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Abdul, for being here with me today. And it was awesome hearing your story. Thank you so much for sharing it.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. And it's a wonderful series. And thank you for the recommendation. I wish you and your wonderful family very well. And I'll be an avid listener. So really looking forward to hearing the other stories. But once again, thank you and huge respect to you for doing such an important podcast. I'm very honored and privileged and humbled that I'm with you today, and I really wish you the best, and my kindest love and regards to you and your family.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bytes. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbytes.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, @parenthoodbytes.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbytes.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.